All right, guys, we're on to book 7 of Chapman's Homer, and we've had Hector and Paris rejoin the fight. And so, in this book now, we're going to have a famous battle between Hector and Ajax, where two greats on either side come face to face and exchange some blows. So, we'll start, as always, with Chapman's argument to the book. Hector by Helenus' advice doth seek adventurous combat on the boldest Greek. 9 Greeks stand up, acceptance every one, but lot selects strong Ajax Telamon. Both with high honour stand important fight, till Herods part them by approach at night. Lastly, they grave the dead. The Greeks erect a mighty wall their navy to protect, which angers Neptune Jove by hapless signs. In depth of night, succeeding woes divines. In Aeta, Priam's strongest son combats with Ajax Telamon. This said, brave Hector through the ports, with Troy's bane-bringing night, made issue to the insatiate field, resolved to fervent fight. And as the weather-wielder sends to seamen prosperous gales, and with their sallow, polished oars, long lifted from their falls, their wearied arms dissolved with toil, and scarce strike one stroke more, like those sweet winds appeared these lords to Trojans turred before. Then fell they to the works of death, by Paris' valour fell, with King Erethus, hapless son, that did in Arna dwell, Menesthius, whose renowned sire a club did ever bear, and of Philomedusa gat, that had her eyes so clear, this slaughtered issue. Hector's dart struck, Aeneas dead. Beneath his good steel casque it pierced above his gorget stead, Glaucus, Hippolochus' son, that led the Lycian crew, Iphinus Dexiades, with sudden javelin slew, as he was mounting to his horse with shoulders took the spear, and ere he sat and tumbling down his powers dissolved war. When grey-eyed Pallas had perceived the Greeks so fallen fight from high Olympus' top, she stooped, and did on Ilian light Apollo to encounter her. To Pergamus did fly, from whence he, looking to the field, wished Trojans victory. At Jove's broad beach these godheads met, and first Jove's sons objects. Why burning in contentious thus? Why do thy extreme effects conduct thee from our peaceful hill? Is it so oversway the doubtful victory of fight, and give the Greeks the day? Thou never pitiest perishing Troy, yet now let me persuade that this day no more mortal wounds may either side invade. Hereafter, till the end of Troy, they shall apply the fight, since your immortal wills resolve to overturn it quite. Pallas replied, It likes me well, for this came I from heaven, but to make either armies cease, what order shall be given? He said, We will direct the spirit that burns in Hector's breast, to challenge any Greek to wounds with single powers impressed, with Greeks admiring, will accept and make some one stand out. So stout a challenge to receive, with a defence as stout. It is confirmed, and Helenus, King Priam's loved seed, by augury discerned the event that these two powers decreed, and greeting Hector, asked him this, Will thou be one advised? I am thy brother, and thy life with mine is evenly prized. Command the rest of Troy and Greece to cease this public fight, and what Greek bears the greatest mind to single strokes excite? I promise thee that yet thy soul shall not descend to fates, so heard I thy survival cast by the celestial states. Hector, with glad allowance, gave his brother's counsel ear, and fronting both the hosts, advanced just in midst his spear. The Trojans instantly surcease, the Greek Atrides stayed. The god that bears the silver bow and war's triumphant maid on Jove's beach like two vultures sat, pleased to behold both parts flow into here, so sternly armed with huge shields, helms, and darts. And such fresh horrors you see driven through the wrinkled waves by rising Zephyr, under whom the sea grows black and raves. Such did the hasty gathering troops of both hosts make to hear, whose tumult settled twixt them both. Thus spake the challenger, Hear, Trojans, and ye well-armed Greeks, what my strong mind diffused, through all my spirits commands me seek. Saturnius hath not used his promised favour for our truce, but studying both our ills, will never cease, till Mars by you his ravenous stomach fills with ruined Troy, or we consume your mighty sea-borne fleet. Since then the general peers of Greece in reach of one voice meet. Amongst you all, whose breast includes The most impulsive mind, let him stand forth as combatant by all the rest designed, before whom thus I call high Jove to witness of our strife. If he with home-thrust iron can reach the exposure of my life, spoiling my arms, let him at will convey them to his tent. But let my body be returned, that Troy's too sexed descent may waste it in the funeral pile. If I can slaughter him, Apollo honouring me so much, I'll spoil the conquered limb and bear his arms to Ilion, where in Apollo's shrine I'll hang them. As my trophies due, his body I'll resign to the disposed by his friends in flamy funerals, and honoured with erected tomb where Hellespontus falls into Aegium, and doth reach even to your naval road, that when our beings in the earth shall hide their period, survivors sailing the Black Sea may thus his name renew. This is his monument, whose blood long since did fates imbrue, whom passing far in fortitude to illustrate Hector's slew. This shall posterity report, and my fame never die. This said, dumb silence seized them all, they shamed to deny, and feared to undertake. At last did Menelaus speak, checked their remissness, and so sighed as if his heart would break. Ah me, but only threatening Greeks, not worthy Grecian names. This more and more not to be borne makes grow our huge defames, if Hector's honourable proof be entertained by none, but you are earth and water all, which symbolize in one. Have framed your faint and fiery spirits, ye sit without your hearts, grossly inglorious, but myself will use exceptive darts, and arm against him, though you can think I arm against too much odds. But conquest's garlands hang aloft amongst the immortal gods. He armed gladly, and would have fought, but Menelaus then, by Hector's far more strength, thy soul had fled the abodes of men. Had not the kings of Greece stood up, and thy attempts restrained, and even the king of men, that in such compass reigned, who took him by the bold right hand, and sternly plucked him back. My brother, 'tis no work for thee, thou seek'st thy wilful wrack. Contain, though it despite thee much, nor for this strife engage thy person with a man more strong, whom all feared in range, yea, whom Aeacides himself in men-renowning war makes doubt encounter, whose huge strength surpasses thine by far. Sit thou then by thy regiment, some other Greek will rise, though he be dreadless and no war will his desires suffice, that makes this challenge to our strength our valours to avow, to whom if he can scape with life, he will be glad to bow. This drew his brother from his will, who yielded, knowing it true, and his glad soldiers took his arms, when Nestor did pursue. The same reproof he set on foot, and thus supplied his turn. What huge indignity is this? How will our country mourn? Old Peleus, that good king, will weep, that worthy counsellor, that trumpet of the Myrmidons, who much did ask me for, all men of name that went to Troy, with joy he did inquire their valour and their towardness. And I made him admire. But that ye all fear Hector now, if his grieved ears shall hear, how will he lift his hands to heaven and pray that death may bear his grieved soul into the deep? Oh, would to heaven's great king Minerva and the god of light, that now my youthful spring did flourish in my willing veins, as when at Fear's towers, about the streams of Dardanus, my gathered Pelian powers and dart-employed Arcadians fought near raging Calydon, amongst whom first of all stood forth great Eurythalion, whom the arms of Aretus, war-brave Aretus, and since he still fought with a club surnamed Clavigerus, all men and fair-girt ladies both for honour called him so. He fought not with a keep-off spear or with a far-shot bow, but with a massy club of iron. He broke through armoured bands, and yet Lycurgus was his death, and not with force of hands, with sleight. Cantering in a lane where his club wanted sway, he thrust him through with his spacious waist, who fell and upwards lay, in death not bowing his face to earth. His arms he did despoil, which iron Mars bestowed on him, and those in Mars's toil Lycurgus ever threw, and ever after war. But when they aged grew, enforced to keep his peaceful house, their use he did renew. On mighty Eurythalion's limbs his shoulder laved well, and with these arms he challenged all, and in those arms excel. Shook, stood, dismayed, none durst his adverse champion make. This same forward mind of mine of choice would undertake, to fight with all his confidence through youngest enemy, Of all the army we conduct, yet I fought with him, I. Minerva made me so renowned, and that most tall, strong peer I slew, his bulk lay on earth, extended here and there, as it were covetous to spread the centre everywhere. That my youth, or not, and now is fresh and all my powers sound, soon should bold Hector be impugned. Yet you, most are crowned with fortitude of all our host, even me, you thinks, are slow, not free, and set on fire with lust to encounter such a foe. With his 9 royal princes rose, Atrides, the first, then Diomed, the Iases, then that did encounter thirst, King Idomen and his consorts, Mars-like, Meriones, Evenman's son, Eurypylus, and Edremonides, whom all the Grecians Thoas called, sprung of Adremon's blood. And wise Ulysses every one proposed for combat, stud. Again Gerenius Nestor spake, let lots be drawn by all. His hand shall help the well-armed Greeks on whom the lot doth fall, and to his wish shall he be helped if he escapes with life the harmful danger breathing fit of his adventurous life. Each marked his lot, cast it into Agamemnon's cask. The soldiers prayed and held their hands, and this of Jove did ask, with eyes advanced to heaven, O Jove, so lead the herald's hand, that Ajax or great Tydeus' son may our wished companion stand, or else the king himself that rules the rich Messenian land. This said, old Nestor mixed the lots. The foremost lot surveyed, with Ajax Telamon was signed. As all the soldiers prayed, one of the heralds drew it forth, who brought and showed it round, beginning at the right hand first, to all most renowned. None knowing it, every man denied, but when he forth did pass to him which marked him cast and hidden, which famous Ajax was, he stretched his hand. Into it the herald put the lot, who viewing it the inscription knew, the Duke denied not, but joyfully acknowledged it, threw it at his feet, and said, O friends, the lot is mine, which to my soul is sweet, for now I hope of my fame shall rise in noble Hector's fall. But whilst I am myself, do you on great Saturnius call, but silently, or to yourselves, that none a Trojan hear, or openly, if you think good, since none alive we fear, none with a will, if I will not, can my bold powers affright. At least for plain fear swing of strength, or want of skill in fight, for I will well prove that my birth and breed and Salamine was not all consecrate to meat or mere effects of wine. This said, the well-given soldiers prayed, up went to heaven in their reign. O Jove, that Ida dost protect, most happy, most divine, send victory to Ajax's side, fain grace his goodly limb. Or if thy love bless Hector's life, and thou hast care of him, bestow on both like power, like fame. This said, in bright arms shone the good strong Ajax, who, when all his war attire was on, marched like the hugely figured Mars. When angry Jupiter, with strength on people proud of strength, sends him forth to infer wreckful contention, and comes on with presence full of fear, so the archive rampire Telamon did twixt the hosts appear, smiled yet of terrible aspect, on earth with ample pace he boldly stalked, and shook aloft his dart with stately grace. It did the Grecians good to see, but earthquakes shook the joints of all the Trojans. Hector's self-felt thoughts with horrid points tempt his bold bosom, but he now must make no counterflight, nor with this honour now refuse that had provoked the fight. The Ajax came near, and like a tower his shield, his bosom barred, the right hand and side brass, and 7 oaken hides within quilled hard. Old Tychius, the best courier did that in Iliad dwell, did fame, did exceeding proof, and wrought it wondrous well, and with this stood he to Hector close, and with this brave began. Now, Hector, thou shalt clearly know, thus meeting man to man, what other leaders arm our host besides great Thetis' son, who with this hardy lion's heart hath armies overrun, but he lies at our crooked sterned fleet, a rival with our king in height of spirit, yet to Troy he many knights did bring, Coical and Aeacides, all able to sustain. All thy bold challenge can import, begin then, words are vain. The helm graced. Hector answered him, renowned Telamon, prince Of the soldiers came of Greece, say not me like one, young and immartial, with great words as to an Amazon dame. I have the habit of all fights, and know the bloody frame of every slaughter well. I know the ready right-hand charge, I know the left, and every sway of my secureful targe. I triumph in the cruelty of fixed combat fight, and manage horse to all designs. I think then with good right I may be confident, as far as this my challenge goes, without being taxed with a vaunt born out of his empty shows. But being a soldier so renowned, I will not work on thee. With the least advantage of that skill I know doth strengthen me, and so with privity of sleight win that for which I strive, but at thy best even open strength, if my endeavours thrive. Thus sent he his long javelin forth, struck the foe's huge shield, near the upper skirt of brass, which was the 8th it held. 6 folds the untamed dart struck through, and in the 7th, though tough hide, the point was checked. Then Ajax through his angry lance did glide, quite through his bright orbicular targe, his cuirass shirt of mail, and did his manly stomach's mouth with dangerous taint assail. But in the bowing of himself, Black Death too short did strike. Then both to pluck their javelins forth encountered lion-like, whose bloody violence is increased by that raw food they eat, of boars whose strength wild nourishment doth make so wondrous great. Again Priamides did wound in midst his shields of brass, yet pierced not through the upper plate. The head reflected was, but Ajax, following his lance, smote through his target quite, and stayed bold Hector rushing in. The lance held way outright, and hurt his neck, outgushed the blood. Yet Hector ceased not so, but in his strong hand took a flint, as he did backwards go, back sharp and big, laid into the field the 7-fold target smit, full on the boss and round about the brass it did ring with it. But Ajax, far greater stone lift up, and wreathing round with all his body laid to it, he sent it forth to wound, and grave unmeasured force to it. A round stone did break within his rundled target. His loved knees to languish did begin, and he leaned stretching out on his shield, but Phoebus raised him straight. And then had they laid on wounds with swords, in use of collar and closer fight. Unless the heralds, messengers of gods and godlike men, the one of Troy, the other Greece, had held betwixt them then imperial sceptres, when the one, Idaeus, grave and wise, said to them, Now no more, my sons, the sovereign of the skies doth love you both. Both soldiers are, all witness good right. But now night lays her mace on earth, 'tis good to obey the night. Idaeus, Telamon replied, to Hector speak not me. He that called all our Achaean peers to station fight, 'twas he. If he first cease, I gladly yield. Great Hector then began, Ajax, since Jove to thy big form made thee so strong a man, and gave thee skill to use thy strength, so much that for thy spear thou art most excellent of Greeks, now let us fight forbear. Hereafter we shall war again, till Jove our herald be, and grace with conquest which he will. Heaven yields to night, and we. Go thou, comfort all thy fleet, all friends, men of thine, as I and Troy, my favourers, who in the fane divine have offered orisons for me, and come, let us impart some ensigns of our strife to show each other's suppled heart, that men of Troy and Greece may say, thus their high quarrel ends. Those that, encountering while such foes, are now being separate friends. He gave a sword, whose handle was with silver studs through driven, scabbard and all, with hangers rich, by Telamons was given, a farewell glossed purple waist. Thus Hector went to Troy, and after him a multitude, filled with his safety's joy, despairing he could ever escape the puissant fortitude of the unimpeached Ajax's hands. The Greeks, like joy renewed for their reputed victory, and brought him to the king, who to the great Saturnine preferred an offering, an ox that fed on 5 fair springs. They flayed and quartered him, and then in pieces cut on spits they roasted every limb, which neatly dressed they drew it off. The work done, they fell to feast. All had enough, but Telamon, king, fed past the rest with good large pieces of the chine. Thus thirst and hunger stayed, Nestor, whose counsels late were best, vows new and first he said, Atrides and my other lords, a sort of Greeks are dead, whose black blood near Scamander's stream and human Mars hath shed. Their souls to hell descended are. It fits thee then, our king, to make our soldiers cease from war, and by the day's first spring let ourselves, assembled, all the bodies bear to fire, with mules and oxen near our fleet, that when we home retire, each man may carry to the sons of fathers slaughtered here their honoured bones. One tomb for all, forever let us rear, circling the pile without the field, and with which we will erect walls and ravelin that may safe our fleet and us protect, and in them let us fashion gates solid and barred about, through which our horse and chariots may well get in and out. Without all let us dig a dike, so deep it may avail or force us against the charge of horse and foot that come to sail. And thus attempts that I see swell in Troy's proud heart shall fail. The kings do his advice approve, so Troy doth court convent at Priam's gate and Ilion tower, fearful and turbulent. Amongst all wise Antenor spake, Trojans and Dardan friends, and peers' assistants, give good ear to what my care commends. To your consents for all our good, resolve let us restore the Argive Helen, with her wealth to him she had before. We now defend but broken faiths. If therefore ye refuse, no good event can I expect of all the wars we use. He ceased, and Alexander spake, husband to the Argive queen. Antenor, to mine ears thy words harsh and ungracious been. Thou canst use better if thou wilt, but if these truly fit thy serious thoughts, the gods with age have reft the graver wit. The warlike Trojans I will speak. I clearly do deny to yield my wife, but all her wealth I render willingly, whatever I from Argos brought, and vow to make it more, which I have ready in my house of peace I may restore. And Priam, surnamed Dardanus, godlike in council's grave, in his son's favour well advised, this resolution gave. My royal friends of every state, there is sufficient done for this late council we have called on in the offer of my son. Now then, let all take needful food. Then let the watch be set in every court of guard held strong, so when the morn doth wet, the high-raised battlements of Troy, Idaeus, shall be sent to the Argive fleet and Atreus' sons to unfold my son's intent, from whose fact our contention springs, and if they will obtain respite from heat of fight, till fire consume our soldiers slain. And after our most fatal war, let us importune still, till Jove the conquest have disposed to his unconquered will. All heard and did obey the king, and in their quarters all, what to set the watch that night, did their suppers fall. Idaeus in the morning went, and the Argive peers did find, in council at Atreus' ships his audience was assigned, and in the midst of all the kings the vocal herald said, Atreides, my renowned king, and other kings his aid, proposed by me in their commands an offer Paris makes, from whose all joy all our woes proceed. He princely undertakes that all the wealth he brought from Greece, would he had died before, he will, with other added wealth, for your amends restore. But famous Menelaus' wife he still means to enjoy, though he be urged the contrary by all the peers of Troy. And this besides I have in charge, that if it please you all, they wish both sides may cease from war, that rites of funeral may on their bodies be performed, that ill the fields lie slain, and after to the will of fate renew the fight again. All silence held at first. At last Adides made reply. Let no man take the wealth or dame, for now a child's weak eye may see the imminent black end of Priam's empire. This sentence quick and briefly given did the Greeks all admire. Then said the king, Herald, thou hear'st the voice entire of all our peers to answer thee, for that of Priam's son. But for our burning of the dead, by all means I am one, to satisfy thy king therein, without the slenderest gain, made of their spoiled carcasses, but freely being slain, they shall be all consumed with fire. To which I cite high thundering Jove, that is the king of Juno's delight. With this he held his sceptre up to all the sky-throned powers, and grave Idaeus did return to sacred Ilion's towers, where Ilians and Dardanians did still their counsels ply. Expecting his return, he came and told his legacy. All whirlwind-like assembled then some bodies to transport, some to hew trees. On the other part the Argives did exhort their soldiers to the same affairs. Then did the new-furred sun smite the broad fields, ascending heaven, and the ocean smooth did run. When Greeks and Troy mixed in such peace, you scarce could either know. And washed they off their blood and dust, and did warm tears bestow upon the slaughtered, and in cars conveyed them from the field. Priam commanded none should mourn, but in still silence yield their honoured carcasses to fire, and only grieve in heart. All burned to Troy. Troy's friends retire to fleet the Grecian part. Yet doubtful night obscured the earth. The day did not appear, when round about the funeral pile the Grecians gathered war. The pile they circled with a tomb, and by it raised a wall. High towers to guard the fleet in them, and in the midst of all they built strong gates, through which the horse and chariots passage had. Without the rampart a broad dike, and long profound they made, on which the palisadoes pitched. And thus the Grecians wrought their huge works in so little time, were to perfection brought, that all gods by the lightness sent the frame thereof admired. Monks whom the earthquake-making god this of their king inquired. Father of gods, will any man of all earth's grassy sphere ask any of the gods' consents to any actions there? If thou wilt see the shag-haired Greeks with headstrong labours frame so huge a work, and not to us due offerings first inflame, as far as white Aurora's dews are sprinkled through the air, fame will renown the hands of Greece for this divine affair. Men will forget the sacred work the sun and I did raise for King Laomedon, bright Troy, and this will bear the praise. Jove was extremely moved with him, and said, what words are these? Thou mighty shaker of the earth, thou lord of all the seas, some other god of far less power might hold conceits, dismayed with this rare Grecian stratagem, and thou rest well apaid, for it will glorify thy name as far as light extends, since when these Greeks shall see again their native soil and friends, the bulwark battered, thou mayst quite devour it with thy waves, and cover with thy fruitless sands this fatal shore of graves. That what their fiery industries have so divinely wrought, in raising it thy power will prove it naught. Thus spake the gods among themselves. Set was the fervent sun, and now the great work of the Greeks was absolutely done. Then slew they oxen in their tents, and strength with food revived, when out of Lemnos a great fleet of odorous wine arrived, sent by Aeneas, Jason's son, born of Hypsipyle. The fleet contained 1,000 ton, which must transported be. To Atreus' sons, as he gave charge, whose merchandise it was, the Greeks bought wine for shining steel, and some for sounding brass, some for oxides, for oxen some, and some for prisoners. A sumptuous banquet was prepared, and all that night the peers and fair-haired Greeks consumed in feast, so Trojans and their aid. And all the night of Jove's thundered loud, pale fear all thoughts dismayed. While they were gluttonous in earth, Jove wrought their brains in heaven. They poured full cups upon the ground, and were to offerings driven. Instead of quaffings and to drink, none durst attempt before. In solemn sacrifice they did almighty Jove adore. Then to their rests they all repaired, bold zeal their fear bereaved. Sudden sleep's refreshing gift securely they received.